that gives us a network, but add some incentivization for initially just TAN for the early server managers, people who can run a server reliably. And then we have a mechanism to say, who wants to change this network, this system? When do we cut off the TAN incentivization and change it to something else for the people who are running servers, because we won't have enough TAN for all the servers we need? And how much do we want to give the early server people? And all of these things, those decisions can be retroactively voted on and changed if necessary. But
Sure.
we can't just sit here and say, well, we can't vote on anything yet because we don't have a voting system, but then we can't make a voting system. And we're talking about creating...
Maybe let me just finish
Sure.
what I envision and what we've used in what we actually used in IOTA to make those initial decisions before there was a voting decision, is simply Discord and Twitter. Like what I always saw was there was always so much like, oh my God, it's not perfect, and someone's going to come in and ruin it all. Like the game theory aspect is anyone here getting active wants to see the success of the network. You know, they want to see something built. And very rarely did I ever see anyone really try to tank anything. You know, so, but what I'm saying is here, like, just so it's not, you know, 3 people making those decisions, even if it can retroactively be changed. I mean, rather than overthinking of it, just these weekly meetings, we make decisions. We say in general and on Twitter, hey, we have an open discussion. We're going to incentivize builders to fork this, and we're going to incentivize Bloom. And these 3 different values, if people have different ideas, like let's say Seafarer will come out with a framework of how to incentivize builders, just to simply fork it and get to the point to where we can get token distributed. And everyone might say, good, let's go with it. Okay, open discussion for 2 weeks. 2 weeks goes by. Do a vote in Discord, do a vote in Twitter, done deal. You know, if someone says, I think that's too much tokens, we should do less, and someone says, well, I think we should do something in the middle, then you open A, B, or C. Again, you throw that A, B, or C on Twitter, you throw it on Discord, people vote. Whatever the result is, you got to accept it and move on. You know, it's not perfect, but again, just to the point to where we can get a network, we could do an airdrop, and then we can actually get voting going, right? I mean, we're really only talking about, you know, I think that's the key of, you know, what is that open discussion period? To me, I would think 2 weeks. You know, 2 weeks is good enough, because in the proposal stage, you know, as soon as we say, okay, this is a proposal, let's open discussion, blast it out in the channels, blast it out in Twitter, open 2 weeks, discuss that, which is really 2 governance meetings, and then after that second governance meeting, do a vote in Discord, do a vote in Twitter. If we happen to build a discourse, do a vote in discourse, and then just go with it. Take the consensus of those 3 votes, you know, basically. And which is, I think, literally doing what you're saying of just make a decision and go with it. It's just, how do we make that decision amongst us people that take part in the governance meetings? 6 people, you know, rather than just one person.
I get what you're saying, but you're opening it up to people who may have nothing to do with TAN. Voting on Twitter is, I mean, it's the best way to get a result that something like Hitler did nothing wrong. I don't know whether you know that story. Fanta was looking for a new name, and they asked the internet, of all places, and the overwhelming vote for the new name for Fanta was Hitler did nothing wrong. You never ask Twitter anything. It's a very bad idea. It seems to me that again, it's ultimately not, it is not a binding decision in the first place anyway. So all you would be doing is delaying something, right? Once the network is out, then an immediate vote can be made on whether the incentivization is appropriate, because now we have a mechanism for formal on-chain voting, whereas Twitter and Discord are extremely informal and prone to corruption as well, even worse. So by making the initial...
I'm just gonna, you know, I mean, for me, I disagree with that statement, just because we did multiple Twitter polls and Discord polls, and we always reached consensus. And sometimes, like, how did we name Tangle Treasury? the URL, I mean, all that stuff. We just literally did that through Twitter polls and Discord polls, and it wasn't always what I thought, and it wasn't always, the active people in the governance meeting, but it
Right.
was a community consensus.
But was it a
Um,
community or was it just people following along and not necessarily interested and certainly not necessarily knowledgeable of what would be a good idea?
well,
I mean,
again, now
people
you're
vote
trying
against
like
their own
how,
interests.
y- again, we could seek perfection, but it was, again, it's up to us to relay the communication and the discussion. And that stance is like, well, they're not involved. They can't make a decision. I guess I just personally don't like that. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm not saying my thought is right. To me, it creates a gatekeep on decision making. And then it leads to really this, well, they don't know and they don't have a technical background and blah, 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 and I mean, like, these are just, at least right now, simple, basic decisions that, anyone that's reading it or anyone that's on Twitter, I mean, there was, I think, in our, can't remember, we had a couple thousand, I believe, on the Tangle Treasury Twitter handle, and, maybe 200 people would vote. So not everyone that was following was voting. It was people that wanted to participate. And again, the questions and the way that it was questioned, and again, that, you could certainly word, hey, we're going to vote on this in a biased way. But that's why in the governance meeting, we would say, okay, let's have this discussion. Let's take it to the vote. This is going to be how we say it. And someone might say, well, you should reword it this way. It's kind of biased. Okay, fair enough. Reword it, put it up for the vote. Here are the options. Boom. And the options aren't like, what do you think we should incentivize? And someone say, well, I think you should give 100% of the token supply to that one person, because that defeats the discussion phase. The discussion phase is, what are the options in the vote going to be? And they have to be legitimate options, not like, I think where that community might have did it wrong was, well, we should put in, Hitler did nothing wrong. That's a little ridiculous. Is, in that discussion phase, how did that even become an option? And somehow, I could guarantee you somehow that was flawed. There's no way the majority of the community said, hey, let's make this an option to vote on. You see what I'm saying?
I think it was an open vote, but my point still stands with what you said. People who maybe weren't necessarily, certainly not at the time, not TAN holders, because no one had any TAN. That's fine, understandable. But look, again, ultimately, we're both agreeing that people should vote on each decision. It's just a question of when they vote on the decisions. And it seems to me that my focus, what I'm trying to illustrate, is that there is a mechanism to get the network going quickly and then vote on the existing structure of the network, whether it needs to be altered, which is a much faster way to go live, a much faster way, and a more reliable way, because then the vote on the structure that's been selected initially will be an on-chain vote.
Just putting this here from Bill Poster. His suggestion is, can people get one vote for whoever joins in the next 2 to 4 meetings? That could be. It also puts us a month out, but unless we did 2 meetings. So what would your suggestion then be? Like, if we were to create a vote of, hey, this is Bill Poster's suggestion, this is my suggestion, this is Edward's suggestion, and just let our little community here vote on it, like, how would that be? So before we get the network to decide on incentives, who makes that decision on how much they get incentivized?
Well, I'm coming from a corporate governance background, and these conversations not all conversations are had with all shareholders. The board makes decisions at board meetings, and then that decision is implemented, and shareholders can object in the future. Or if a decision needs to be made quickly, the board makes a decision and then puts it to the shareholders as to ratify the decision. As a matter of fact, this was recently done with Elon Musk's outrageous salary. The board set his salary to $50 billion or something stupid. And some shareholders objected to that, and the courts forced the board to hold to shareholder vote, which, believe it or not, was overwhelmingly approved to give Elon Musk a salary of $50 billion. But at least it went to the shareholders after the fact. And that's that's a very simple process to do, and it means that the network can get going based on the people who show up. So the dozen of us who are here, or whatever, half a dozen, make a decision. Okay, let's work out a way to incentivize as many, however many. I don't know how many servers that are required to get the network up and going. That's a technical component that I've not really delved into, but I don't think it needs to go to a vote and wait till next week, the week after, the following week, 4 meetings on, and there's still no server. I think that would just be dragging our feet on something that months ago was initially proposed when IOTA said we're dumping the free and permissionless system. A couple of you got together and said, why don't we just keep Shimmer the way it is? We'll call it TAN, and it is a free and permissionless system. We fork the tech. Months later, the tech hasn't been forked because I don't know what the delay is, but forking the tech doesn't sound like it's a complicated piece of work. Setting up the servers doesn't sound like it's complicated because we're forking open source code. The people who spend the time setting up and maintaining the servers need to have some kind of incentive to do that. That's fine. But other than that, everything else already exists. All you need to do is turn the server on and then start voting on stuff.
Well, because you're a coder, right?
Yeah, but I'm not this level of coding. Computer science stuff is full on.
I mean, because I know, the Tangle Pay team is currently doing it, but we need more. Like I get it. It seems easy. Oh, you just fork it, but it's still, like you said, well, I'm not that level of coder. So there's, as easy it is, it seems that there's still limited people in that, and then that costs essentially money at the end of the day. But instead of getting too back and forth in time, so I'm just trying to concrete what you are, so I can write it up, so then we can do a summary meeting and et cetera. And
sure. And I'm sorry if I'm monopolizing. I don't mean to monopolize anything.
No,
I'm just trying to suggest that getting bogged down in a voting mechanism for a voting mechanism for a voting mechanism on a smart chain that is only temporary anyway on BSC, then is I think a colossal waste of energy and calendar time. And if the tech already exists and the intention is to implement that tech, implement it and then vote on the tech that we've implemented. That would be step one in my view, just from a question of efficiency and calendar days.
I just want to be clear, like, I try to always, and I saw an opportunity to sort of lead these groups because I feel like I am pretty good at keeping things moving forward. I mean, my background is project management in large organizations, but and just because you might be proposing something that doesn't agree with me, that's the whole point of all this, is that we can take difference of opinions and come to a consensus. So I just want to be able to clearly write down. So your is whoever's in these meetings are, in a sense, quote unquote, that board, and that these decisions
again. We're only talking about the very early stages before the network exists, in order to make the network exist, and then from there you broaden it, and you can even revisit the decisions made with a formal vote that is on chain. So it's purely a 3-month interim structure.
Yeah, this meeting and this thing that we're trying to build is exactly that. Just till we get to where we can do voting on chain with tokens.
Right.
So again, so the decisions should be made in the weekly governance meetings within the governance channel by those who participate and are active. Basically, is that a summary of it?
Well, those who are present at the time the decision needs to be made. I think just so that you rightly get a number of different perspectives, right? You use the Edward de Bono's 6 thinking hats. You get people who are, you try and say, well, this is why it's a bad idea. This is why it's a good idea. Here's how we can make it better, right? You have that conversation with the people who are prepared to show up and take the time, and you make the decision at that time. If it is not an earth-shattering decision or